It was a result of an AI suggestion that that guy's phone number from the Atlantic got put into Mike Waltz's phone as the wrong person. Because like if you've got an iPhone, it says, if you get a call from somebody that says, maybe such and such a person, do you want to add it to, and it'll scrape emails and stuff and put that contact information in your phone, and then Signal on WhatsApp do the same, will then read your address book to bring it. And so that's how that happened. So we've AI to thank for the funniest thing that's happened so far in this administration.
If we lived in any kind of not a shit world, this would be a cue to stop baking AI into fucking everything. Everything. Do you know how many times I've just gone to do something normal and I'm like, wait, how is this here?
I saw a good post on Blue Sky this morning about it's a guy, he was watching the movie Heat, Michael Mann movie, and he thought he saw a young actress and was like, is that Angelina Jolie? So he Googled, is Angelina Jolie in Heat? And the AI, 2 paragraphs on Angelina Jolie reproductive system. So yeah, that's the only thing I think is good about it, is the number of times that people are posting really funny examples of it completely fucking up. It's totally unreliable. It's useless.
Yeah, I think like we said before, it's kind of like a car that won't drive you into a wall 99% of the time. Like you pointed out, that's basically just a Tesla. And,
Do you think some of the stuff with the group chat might have been a reason for some of the tariff nonsense? Because that was obviously a major news story, and there's going to be hopefully some major ramifications.
No, I mean, I think the tariffs thing, he's just been itching to do the tariffs thing because he genuinely thought it was going to be brilliant, and then the American bond market started to absolutely fucking tank, which was the Liz Truss moment, really. Is when other nations, traders all over the world went, oh, right, I think they're mental. And they start applying the moron tax. And that was the point at which they sort of rolled them back for 90 days, allegedly. But because...
Well, we have AI to thank for the tariffs as well, for the numbers they arrived at.
Oh, that was amazing.
It's just like, I think there had actually been people, because he'd been going on about the tariffs for ages before he even got elected, he'd been going on about the tariffs. There were actually people on his kind of side who can do maths, who had come up with some numbers of maybe like very low numbers, at 1 point something. And he's like, no, I need a good number. You need to give me like
Big numbers.
10.
Big numbers.
Big numbers, and you go out there with them. So then they were like, oh, those aren't numbers. And then, he's just fucking come up. It's been an absolutely just astonishing turn of events. Where I feel like I say this all the time, where I keep feeling like I cannot possibly be surprised anymore how batshit we're about to get. And then just as I started to think that,
they do something else. Yeah, there is no bottom. So you are in this constant state of being both astonished and yet not surprised by whatever the latest fucking thing is. I mean, the tax thing, he was just absolutely itching to, because he did genuinely think it would be great, and that's the problem. And the way Liz Truss is still sort of going about the place saying, I didn't really get a proper chance because, like the deep state undermined me, right? No, what happened was you tried your mental shit. The markets went, that's some mental shit. Money was fleeing the United Kingdom like rats off a fucking sinking ship. And then you got shit canned.
I think the thing that I was so taken by was the fact that, apart from the surface level terribleness of all of it, the lack of understanding of where component parts and things like that come from, like minerals.
Well, this is Brexit all over again, isn't it?
They know how things are built.
No, they don't know fucking anything.
Exactly.
Right, that's the thing. They don't know anything. They don't understand the complexity. Well, just build your chips over here. Right, okay, so it's going to take 5 years to build a facility with the fucking clean room and all this and that, and then you need the rare earth minerals that China has now fucking decided it's not going to. So it's great that you think you're going to get them from Ukraine. You will actually have to help Ukraine, and the war will need to stop. and they haven't got any more than anybody else. They just started talking about it so that they would give you something that you thought you could want.
It's the worst game of poker I've ever seen, because it's that way of, if you had to have something in your hand, because what you're saying there is almost if they had brought everything in, they'd started building up factories, production facilities, had done all this and then done it, at least maybes. But you have nothing. You have you have no capacity to do anything.
They don't understand.
You cannot manufacture like laptops and iPhones and like that in the United States. You just can't do it. And like you're not gonna Trump, like everything is computer. It's like, he doesn't know. You made an iPhone in the US, would cost like 17 grand. Like, you just can't do it. But did you see like the guy who tweeted out erroneously that there was going to be a suspension on tariffs, and then the markets bounced back?
There was just some random guy.
A random guy had misinterpreted one of Trump's cronies saying something in an interview where he'd started off, someone said, and what about, is there going to be a pause on tariffs? And the guy went, yeah, no. And because he said yeah before he said no, this guy suddenly tweeted out like, oh yeah, they were wedded. But the markets bounced back, and then the White House clarified like, no, we're not. And then they were so then the next day they were like, oh yeah, we are actually. It's like, yeah, obviously.
I think it's so disgusted how as well, that at no point, and it really says who they are, they've actually tried to approach the China issue from any kind of moral stance, because it is like feasible to say that a lot of the stuff we're getting built is being built under slave labor conditions, more or less. So this seems like a kind of, COVID really highlighted this, that if we put all our manufacturing on one space on the planet, not going to go well if that place falls down. So then India sort of come up, but you're dealing with the same human rights issues in both, and companies are tying themselves in knots, trying to put almost like protected bubbles around certain manufacturing bits, but then you get the sub-supplier down the supply chain, inevitably something's going to happen. And it would feel to me that a good way to say, well, if you buy British or American, yeah, you're going to spend, you have to spend more money. It's going to cost you more, but you'd have the peace of mind of knowing that the item that you've had has been constructed under morally good conditions. But nobody's ever fucking said that. It's always coming at it from this sort of weird numbers level that, I'm not a numbers guy for the most part, but I can tell none of this makes any fucking sense at all. I mean, you're not going to win on an economic battle with this issue. The only way you're going to move it forward surely has to be a kind of individuals on the ground being more aware of where their stuff's coming from. Not just consumers, but like small businesses and stuff like that as well. And even the high level businesses, that's where the pressure should be if you want to sort of make America great again, where you're not going to be able to just izzy-wizzy, let's get busy, let's go with. I don't know what he was trying to achieve.
But you need to understand that he's thick as fuck.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand the complexity of the 9 million different fucking components that go into a mobile phone, of how this chip's made here and that chip's made there, and that you need this metal. He doesn't understand that car parts and chassis and things like that are going backwards and forwards across borders, to one bit being done here and then one process being done there, because that's always been possible. It's all the same shit as the Brexiteers. So it's like, remember when we were talking about what was going to happen with Brexit? And I was like, look, you're going to end up with a situation where there isn't fucking tomatoes and shit in the supermarkets. And 2 years later, that's exactly where we fucking were. That there wasn't fucking for a period of time. Like Sainsbury's and things were like fucking putting cardboard things on the shelves because there was no fucking food in the shops for a while, because these people are fucking idiots. They don't understand complexity. They've never bothered to think about how anything arrives in their fucking mouth or in their stomach, or like how any of it happens.
Yeah.
Shit just happens.
Trump's looking at just the raw numbers, and he sees like Madagascar is sending a load of stuff to America, and America isn't really exporting anything. And it's like,
Lemurs don't buy much.
Exactly. I mean, America doesn't make much vanilla. Madagascar makes all the world's vanilla, and they're extremely poor, so they don't want to buy Oreos. Yeah, import them from America, and there's no problem with that, but he just doesn't understand that from the raw numbers.
Oh, it's bizarre. I mean, I can't get my head around how all this seems very easily graspable.
Have you seen the old classic iPencil thing? I think it was Leonard Read that wrote it, but it was kind of popularised by Milton Friedman. And it was this thing, he showing a simple product, a pencil. It looks like one of the simplest things you could have, but then if you investigate all the separate parts of it, the graphite, it comes from a mine in one country, and then the wood comes from somewhere else, the paint and the colouring for it, and the ferrule, the metal bit, and then the rubber comes from another place, and it's like all this complicated interplay of different people work with different specialities who all just know their one particular thing.
Yeah.
The guy who makes the rubber doesn't have a clue where the graphite comes from or how that's made. So this has been a kind of popular trope amongst free market Americans, and they'll quote it all the time. But I think that those guys haven't realised how much the kind of the hyper nationalists have taken over.
Yeah.
So that all that understanding, knowledge of how complex markets are, it's just out the window.
Yeah, because I'm not like a numbers person, but I do work in procurement. So what you just described there, that's in effect sort of my job, that we've got something we're trying to make, we're trying to put something together, whether it's a project or an item, whatever. And then, you connect all the dots to get all the bits together to make the thing happen. And that's very different from people that are in finance, but there's a detachment from the practicalities of how we actually get the thing done outside of the spreadsheet. And I had wondered, that's how I was actually going to ask you about Trump. You wouldn't really think Trump Wall Street guy properly, but he is. I think some of them suffer from that problem of being numbers brained a little bit too much and they don't know enough about the practicalities. And that's what you're saying there. They've got too far away from the fundamental basics of this is actually what drives an economy. This is actually what makes business happen. And now it makes all that crypto shit, that is.
So originally that stuff was kind of like a reaction to the left. It was trying to say to the socialists that you can't actually control the economy in a really top down way. It's bad, kind of anti-communism kind of thing. You can't have a Politburo just deciding how many pencils we need.
To be fair, it's absolutely correct.
Yes, that's right.
Every all the downfall of communist economies has always been trying to do that, and people ending up melting their cutlery to make steel quotas and eating their grandparents when they fucking starve to death. So it doesn't fuck.
I think
and they're right.
The confusion and the problem has been that everyone has looked at that being the left's problem, and it was going to come from the left. They were the ones that are going to be doing things top down, bureaucratic, and ignored the problem that actually it's the right wing that are doing this. Is the fascists who actually have the same kind of totalitarian ideology, but implementing it in a different way. I think people have kind of been blind to that, and
which is why a load of people who ought to have known better voted for Trump, because they thought that
your Liz Truss type folk who would who say they're free market people. Well, tariffs are the complete opposite.
Yeah, it's just that incremental thing that's been happening for decades, really, just slowly the right moving. It's almost like, you're spun so far.
It's that way.
Yeah, exactly. You're now the thing you're just trying to stand against. And you've seen that through the George Bush administration, that, okay, this is getting to more of like a kind of religious, that's coming into this now, religious nationalism. That all happened in the wake of 9/11. And then Trump is kind of the end result of that. I mean, it probably does go back to Reagan, but that's exactly what you're saying. That I think there are normal Americans, if such a thing exists, that probably they don't want, the reason they would never want to be.
We're all shaking our head.
They all say, I'll never vote Democrat for the reasons as you probably just outlined there, but they're still living in the delusion that the right, the Republicans still stand for that, very kind of, you hear it from, people in the Tories over here who talk about Thatcher, that very simple kind of back to basics economy, the government should not have nothing to do with this. And they've completely missed the last 40 plus years effectively of where we've arrived at. Keir Starmer's the same way with Labour, because they're still singing off this old songbook that doesn't fit with where we've arrived at now, where we now have very extreme ends of the spectrum, and basically anybody with common sense is being sort of shoved away.
The thing that also never gets mentioned is that, the boom time of the fucking red fucking braces brigade from the early 80s was based on a one-time fucking fire sale of all of Britain's assets. And the reason that we've been fucking skint ever since, if you sell your house and don't buy another one, you can have a hell of a big spending spree, but you will then not have anywhere to live. Right? And that was what this idea that the government shouldn't, they just pilfered the national assets, flogged them off. And where's that led us to? Oh, we're having to renationalise British Steel because a Chinese company that owned British Steel, appears to have been deliberately trying to make sure that we didn't have a single blast furnace left. And it's funny how when it's the one in England, they actually finally fucking do something. But Port Talbot was allowed to fucking go cold.
I think that's where Trump is a funny character with the China things. He's been on about China for decades. I think there probably was a window of time where that would actually have made sense on some level of like, we've got to be kind of careful with what we're doing here.
No, we definitely fucking do. I mean,
Yeah.
we're as bad in this country. We nearly fucking let them have the telephone network. Morons.
I mean, going back to like the 80s when he was first coming up, that was probably...
Yeah, he's just racist.
Well, there's that too. But, you know, I think that at that time, what he was saying was largely ignored, possibly for that reason. But as I said, we've arrived at a situation now where, yeah, America, the UK, we've sold off everything that we've got. And the Chinese economically have us over a barrel. We've got nothing to fight back with, basically. So, you know, I think that the tariff thing is ridiculous because you're already on the losing end of this. So I don't know what you're getting out of aggravating and pissing them off.
Again, because he's stupid and he doesn't understand the difference between trade and aid. He thinks that basically he thinks that the Americans buying things from other countries who aren't then buying something back is like some sort of aid, some sort of gift. It's like, no, they make something you want and you buy it off them. But he just looks at it as, well, they're not trading with us.
How bad could it get then? I mean, it's not going well.
They're arresting people. They're picking people up on the streets, bundling them into vans and sending them to a foreign country to put them into what's effectively a concentration camp. We're there.
When Mahmoud Khalid was picked up, some American had tweeted saying, this is the canary down the mine shaft. I'm like, if you're sending canaries down the mine shaft right now, that is premeditated canary murder. This is a mine shaft full of dead miners. What the fuck are you talking about? We are just fucking rounding people up and exporting them to foreign concentration camps.
Yeah.
And then going, oh, what did the judge tell us to bring them back? Sorry, can't.
There's people now.
We found who's this?
There's folk now, like kind of you would think of as kind of moderate folks who are now saying, actually, this is fascism now. It's like we've been saying. I listened back to some of our original Trump podcasts. I think it was the second episode I ever did, and we said this is fascism. Like it just straight up said it.
That's why
obvious.
Not to be egotistical about it, but that's why I've been putting up some of these throwback episodes because if you go back, and especially on the Trump thing, Brexit as well, we were not. It's not us. It's people listening to this as well. The majority of folk, I think, are quite ahead of this. The media, I said this about Keir Starmer, it's like you feel like you're on a sort of like 10-year delay. That like you see this thing immediately, you're like, well, that's not the guy. That's not him. You know, or you know, this is obviously fascism. This is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And then you have to sort of wait. And then we talked about this with fucking Andrew News article. What was it? I reckon this Trump guy might be a fascist after all. Who could ever have seen that coming? And you're like, that is the most depressing fucking part of all this, because what it highlights is all of it's fucking preventable. This was everything that has happened for the last 20 plus years has been stoppable.
Like Cassandra.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, forgive me for a moment, I think it was Tom Nichols had put something out on Blue Sky saying they're blaming the rise of Trump on the left for having complained and calling things like fascism before. I'm like, no, dickhead. What's actually happened is we've been trying to tell you that you are on the road to fascism and now you have arrived there.
Yeah, like back 8 years ago when we said this, we weren't wrong then and right now. We were right then. It's continued to be fascist.
Yes.
Do you remember just before the election, before the presidential election, some of the Democrats had said he was a fascist, and folk were kind of up in arms going, oh, you're being a bit hysterical, this will like work against us and stuff like that.
I think that the thing that I kind of got halfway on that one in the sense that I felt the comparison to Nazis, I know they've invited that, you know, Elon in particular with the salutes, but I do think that the Nazis were quite organised, relatively competent by comparison. So my thing is like, they are fascists, but we have to remind everyone they're also idiots, which comes back to it being preventable. You're not up against, this is the thing that is so embarrassing about this, is that the Democrats have lost to the shower of shite. They're not impressive. This isn't fucking Darth Vader and the Emperor level people you're dealing with here. These are like the dipshit crap end of fascism. The scariest thing about it is, what if somebody competent had done this to America? Because you allowed these absolute morons, these muppets, to take over your entire country. And you could have stopped it at any time. So, I mean, God forbid there's someone who actually is the real fucking deal comes along here, because these people wouldn't have lifted a fucking finger either.
That's going to be Barn Trump in about 15 years.
It's ridiculous.
He's a worrying fucking 6'7" looming fucking toxin, isn't he?
Yeah. But yeah, I haven't allowed myself the feeling of being like disappointed in Jon Stewart, because it's just what happens if somebody is like has quite good political takes for 15 to 20 years. Eventually they get to a point where they just stop having very good political takes. For like the last few years he's been going, oh, I think he's it all. Like, I don't think it's fascism, guys. Like, come on. And then he came, what was it, like the other day, and he was like, oh God, like this really feels like fascism. There's just no way I could have known. It's not as if people in Blue Sky were tweeting at me in all caps about it every single day for the last couple of years. It's like, yeah, I know you're joking about it and being a bit self-deprecating now, but genuinely, you were being a cunt about this. And for quite a lot of people, like, you have quite a big voice. So for quite a lot of people, you probably did pull them back a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's quite a few people like him that have been on that. They've turned it into a joke. That's the other thing too, is that I don't think we ever did that. I think we can make fun of these people, but we never shy away from underlying the danger of it. And I think that a lot of the SNL lot on the first time round with us were not helpful with what they were doing, and Jon Stewart sort of, I think, continued in that pattern. It's the two thing, it's to say these guys aren't fascist, that's hysterical, is bad, but also simultaneously sort of holding up the Democrats like they're great, at which point you just look like a fucking idiot. It's like, well, clearly neither of those things are true. The Democrats are rubbish. They need to really step up. But actually the threat you've got here is very genuine. So the commonality would be people like AOC and Bernie that I don't think are perfect and are probably quite flawed, but to me are light years ahead of what a lot of the other Democratic individuals would be about. That was a media campaign to mock them, that way of thinking. In the same way that if you were saying, I think these Trump fellas might actually be quite fashion in their ideology, you were also made fun of and told you were stupid.
America has been on this road since the 70s. I mean, it started with Nixon. And I mean, you know, Nixon's policy platform now would be pretty far to the left of the Democrats. But so many problems started with Nixon. Even the obesity crisis in America started with Nixon, because he wanted cheaper groceries, because he wanted that to be something that he could, you know, he wanted
An old-fashioned word there, groceries.
I love that word.
But he wanted to get women to vote for him, and I think he didn't get a lot of female votes because women found him creepy, because he was a fucking weirdo, and he sort of got the Department of Agriculture, essentially he had them looking at ways to make commodity crops cheaper, and this is where all the fucking corn and the soy and like all of this becomes, you know, like the fucking four products that everything is fucking made of, you know. So yeah, that all starts with him. So it's all Nixon's fault. Yeah, but they've been on this road forever, and then you get Reagan in, and you get the slow disintegration of sort of media ownership laws, and of like the Glass-Steagall Act, which was, you know, separation of retail and investment banking and things like that. And America is now it's this fucking eggshell. It's so fragile. Everything is so fragile. They are so close, I think, to being really like, and you know, it's not going to be the hand, you know what I mean? But it's not going to not be the Handmaid's Tale. You know, like they won't have the costumes, but it's, you know, we're in the situation where I think,
I don't think it'll get to that point, because I think there'll be a violent uprising long before that. But I think that one thing that, because everything you're saying is on point with this, but one point that Free always brings up is the sort of tit for tat with the Democrats on this stuff. So often the Democrats will roll out, you know, legislation that suits them. I mean, when the right get back in, they massively take advantage of. But equally, when the right does something really stupid in government, it's actually quite rare to see the Democrats sort of undo some of that. And I think this is to come back to kind of the Jon Stewart problem, if you like, which is you can't be in a situation where you're still looking at this, that either of these paths is the correct one. This a fundamental restructure of all of it. And it's where the libertarian thing, I think probably why we might have come into all this slightly more from that angle was before the libertarian Americans got really fucking fascist as well, they were actually on the right track of neither of these parties is actually the answer, and this direction of travel with them passing the ball back and forth it's the end result is going to be the same, just on different.
I mean, the issue that you've got is that, I mean, like the Democrats, with the exception of like the odd ones, usually in Chicago, who are fucking absolutely mentally corrupt. But for the most part, the Democrats are always trying to do things properly and trying to be seen to be doing things properly, while the other side are just busy fucking gerrymandering everything, stacking the court. Just they'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. So you end up that they've been in a minority and yet they've been in charge for the last 50 fucking years. And it's eaten away at that Overton window, however smashed it might be, until we've reached a point where normal things are viewed as completely abnormal and abnormal things are viewed as completely normal. And you try and explain to Americans talking about socialized medicine, you mean freely available medical care? Oh, well, yeah, but you have waiting lists. So do you. They just work differently. For you, it's while you wait for your insurance company to answer whether or not you can have something, whereas for us, we go to the doctor and they put us on the list. It'll be the same amount of time. It's how resources work. But
I don't think it's even just a problem in America. I think technocratic centrism generally across the world doesn't have the answers to the problem of this emerging far right problem in the way they go about communicating things. I just don't think they've really got a handle on how to fight back against it. So, I mean, you see like Swinney organising this kind of summit of like other parties to try and, work against reform essentially. And what the Tories are now becoming, which is like reform light. You've got to try and do something. I'm not too sure what it is. I don't think they necessarily have the tools or the capability to be able to fight back against it.
Yeah, I think they can be, like the state of the country now can be traced back to selling off all our assets, because the country's fucking poor as shit.
Yeah.
We're all poor as shit. Like, living standards have just completely collapsed. I think for a couple of years, like sort of post-COVID, people could kind of act a little bit like this is just a recession. But it's not. This is just it. It's just going to get worse. It's going to keep getting worse.
Yeah.
It's fucking Tale of Two Cities time. Like, this is it. And there's not a single political party that has the means of addressing that.
There isn't a fast solution, and this is the problem. So those resources have been built up over, for the most part, sort of a century, really. I mean, prior, the Gary Stevens, the chippy economist who's all over YouTube, who I like a lot. He says, you think this is as bad as it can get? This isn't as bad as it can get. Look at Brazil. He said, look at India. Look at what it was like in the Victorian period. It can get a lot worse. It can get a lot fucking worse, and it will do if we don't tax rich people. These,
Well, this is sort of what your point was, though. Because I think the issue here is, to me, that we've got a lot of people that are like reformy head cases, basically, in America, Trumpians, whatever. They think they've got the answer, but we categorically know that they don't. And we know from history that they don't on every level. So what we have to do is find the language to talk them out of being that way, so we can focus on actually solving the problem, which is
it's two separate things, really. Yes, like how do we communicate to people and get them on side to actually getting the country going in the right direction first? Because we live in a democracy, so that is just a necessity. That we need to be able to communicate to people in the right way and tell them that we are actually addressing their concerns in ways that will take us in the right direction. That's hard because people are scared about the economy and immigration and things like that. And whether they're right or wrong to have those concerns might be due to misinformation. You can't just ignore it or just pan them off, but you also can't just pander to it either. And that's all that's happened. There's folk who are trying to ignore it, and there's folk who are pandering, and there's not really folk who are actually addressing it.
Yeah.
Again, I've heard that what happened with Bernie, but even more noticeably with Jeremy Corbyn. It's not that they're right about everything, but they're more in the correct ballpark than the baddies are. And it was sort of rather than, I don't know if I should put Swinney under the bus here, but maybe we should. it's rather than just going, well, that doesn't lead to an election victory, therefore we can't say those things. It should be thought of, but that's the right thing to say. So you need to start from that position. Whereas I think we're still playing off, again, a playbook from 20 odd years ago about what works well in the media, what about the messaging. And I think that's the frustration, I think, in America and here too, where the good thing about AOC and Bernie is when you hear them talk, you go, all right, you're talking about like a normal person. Like one of you could be sat here right now and we could actually communicate with you.
And you believe what you're saying.
Yeah, and because they're not saying these things because they are popular or in vogue. They're saying them because there's actually an inner morality driving it. And the thing that the key to exposing the right wing is that, say, there is no morality driving this. There's nothing under the bonnet. It's just nonsense. There's no practical solution. There's no morality there. And that's the bit where how do we do that?